Aetherdrift previews have just begun, and we're covering the bulk of the main set over on the main channel, but over here, we're going to be covering the Commander cards as they're being previewed. We're getting 2 Commander precons with the set, the first one being Eternal Might, which is an Esper deck all about looting and zombies, and then the second deck is Living Energy, which is a teamer deck focused on artifacts and energy. And today we just got our first look at the new Commanders leading both of the precons, so 2 per precon. So we're going to check out those sweet new cards, but before we begin, a quick reminder, if you want to pre-order these sweet new Aetherdrift cards, you can do so over at our sponsor, cardkingdom.com/mtggoldfish. Alright, we begin with the face commander of Eternal Might, the Esper Looting Zombies deck. It is Temet Naktaman's Will. It's a 5-mana Esper legendary creature zombie wizard. It's a 4/4 with Vigilance Menace. Whenever you attack, draw a card, then discard a card. And whenever you draw a card, zombies you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So the face commanders kind of tell you the main mechanics of the deck, and Temet tells us that this is all about looting, drawing cards and discarding cards, and zombies. Whenever we're drawing cards, our zombies get bigger until end of turn. The main draw here, pun intended, is Temet's very, very powerful Anthem effect for your zombie creatures. On your turn, before you're doing anything, just on your draw step, all your zombies get +1/+1 until end of turn. And then when you attack, the attack trigger is not super crazy or anything. It's just a single loot, but it's a very easy to trigger loot. You just attack with anything, and you're going to loot 1 time per turn. Really easy to trigger, and that means all your zombies on your turn, when you're attacking, get +2/+2 until end of turn at the very minimum. And then obviously, if we're drawing more cards, then the Anthem effect gets much, much better. Now, Temet is a new option for Esper zombie players. The previous one, Verena Lich Queen, was the go-to if you want to have access to Esper colors for your zombie deck. And I quite like this one. It basically gives you a huge draw engine, much more significant when you have Verena on the battlefield, you're attacking with a bunch of zombies and you loot that many times. Verena is a little bit cheaper to cast. She's 4 mana as opposed to Temet's 5. And typically you want Verena out early to mid game because the significant loot engine is going to be much more powerful mid to late to set up your graveyard shenanigans. Whereas Temet to me strikes me more as a finisher, right? It's not something you necessarily need to run out super quickly. The loot effect is not as significant for setting up your like mass reanimation shenanigans that zombies are very well known for. Temet's main role is to just get dropped down the turn you want to start killing people, right? You play Temet, you draw a whole bunch of cards, all your zombies get like +10/+10 until end of turn, and that is GG for your opponents. So personally, I kind of prefer Temet in the 99 of an Esper Zombies list. I think Verena would still be my go-to as the commander, just because Verena's abilities kind of work better mid to late game. It's something I want to curve out into and then start swinging with zombies and drawing more cards and looting more than what Temet's currently offering. Whereas Temet, I kind of want to play it like late game, you know, when I already have a critical mass of zombies, drop down Temet, give them all +5/+5 or more, and then kill people. That said, though, Temet is still a really good commander in the command zone. He's doing an absolutely fine job. Zombies as a creature type can definitely draw a lot of cards, and if you're slapping down something like Kindred Discovery or Titan of Yara, and you're making a whole bunch of zombies all at once, you're attacking with a big zombie horde. Zombies are known to go wide. They're often just like 2/2 tokens that you kind of vomit out onto the battlefield. It's very easy to have like 5 or more zombies on the battlefield at any given time, and then you're drawing 5 or more cards off Kindred Discovery or Titan when you're attacking. Then that triggers Temet a whole bunch of times, and now all your zombies are like +7/+7s. That's going to be a very quick way to end the game. Now, the secondary commander for this deck is much more interesting to me. This is Hashiton Scarab's Fist. It's a 2-mana Orzhov legendary creature zombie wizard. It's a 1/3, and whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 and a blue, so 3 mana total. If you do, create a tap token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. Now, for people who are a little bit confused, It's an Orzhov creature, and it requires white and black. However, it has an activated ability of 2 and a blue. And the activated ability, the blue mana symbol in the activated ability counts towards the commander identity, the color identity of Hashiton. So despite it looking like an Orzhov commander, it's actually an Esper commander. And that's why it can also just lead this precon as well. Now, as for the mechanics itself, oh boy, Hashiton looks really busted to me. You have to discard a creature card, and then you have to pay 3 mana, which is not nothing. But once you do that, you get a copy of whatever you discarded. And whatever you discard can be really, really big. I'm assuming Hashiton is going to be like Haymaker.deck. Like, imagine you're like looting away a Hullbreaker Horror or an Avacyn Angel of Hope. You have 3 mana available, you pay that 3 mana, and then boom, you just have a 4/4 Hullbreaker Horror. Who cares if it's a little bit smaller? An Avacyn and an Angel of Hope, who cares if it's a 4/4 instead of an 8/8? All your stuff is indestructible, or Hullbreaker Horror just means all your opponents cannot ever have a permanent or spell resolve for the rest of the game. This card looks really, really strong. It's basically going to be Haymaker.deck. Hashiton also has a lot of combo potential. One of the ones that immediately popped to mind is going nuts with Tortured Existence, and like anything that ETB and untaps a whole bunch of lands like Peregrine Drake. When you have another creature in the graveyard and then a Peregrine Drake in your hand, you activate Tortured Existence, you make a copy of the Peregrine Drake with Hashiton's ability, you will untap lands, 5 lands when you're doing so, and then you can repeat this process infinite times while making infinite mana, by the way. And if you have anything on the battlefield, like a 4th card on the battlefield that cares about zombies entering the battlefield, you can have just Wayward Servant, for example, on the battlefield. You infinitely drain out your opponents too. So it's infinite mana, infinite zombies, and then if you have a 4th piece lying around, just infinite drain and you win the game. So yeah, Hashiton, no matter how you slice it, this is going to be an incredibly powerful commander. It's either Haymaker.deck or Combos.deck. Either way, this commander is definitely way stronger than the face commander, but it's going to have a very unique build around. Moving on to the next precon, this is a Living Energy, the Teamer artifact energy deck. The face commander of this deck is Saheeli, Radiant Creator. It's a 4 mana Teamer, legendary creature, human artificer. It's a 4/4 that says whenever you cast an artificer or artifact spell, you get an energy counter. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 3 energy. When you do, create a token that's a copy of target permanent you control, except it's a 5/5 artifact creature in addition to its other types and has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So Saheeli is the 3rd energy precon commander that we've seen in the span of a year. We didn't have any energy since OG Kaladesh, who knows how many years ago, like 6+ years ago at this point. And then suddenly in the span of a year, we had 3, just all back to back. So I don't know. I guess there was a huge demand for energy, and WotC is meeting that demand with gusto. Cause we have the 3rd one, and this one's a little bit different. It's Timur instead of Jeskai. So one of the 3 colors is different. But jokes aside, Saheeli actually plays a little bit differently than the other ones we've seen. Satya was very much like attacking and blink focused, not too much heavy on artifacts. Dr. Madison Lee was very much artifact focused, and energy was mostly like a secondary theme. Like it was an artifact deck that had a very strong energy theme. Satya was an energy deck that had a very strong artifact theme. And then Saheeli feels to me like an artifact deck masquerading as an energy deck. Like the energy part of it seems like a kind of a screen, a smoke screen, if you will. Because compared to the other two, Saheeli is very different, but very similar to a previous artifact commander that we've seen before. And that one is Mishra, Eminent One. So Mishra, on the beginning of combat on your turn, you would make a copy of a non-artifact creature. It would become a 4/4 copy of it. It would last a single turn, and then you would sacrifice it at end step. That's very similar to what Saheeli is doing, where on the beginning of your combat, you copy any permanent. It becomes a 5/5 creature. You smash with it, and then it must be sacrificed. Mishra is a little bit more restrictive on what you can copy. It has to be a non-creature artifact, whereas Saheeli can copy whatever. It doesn't have to be an artifact. It doesn't have to be a non-creature. It could be whatever permanent you want, but the ability is basically the same, and you're also going to be an artifact deck because that's your primary way of getting your energy counters. So much like Mishra, you're going to have very similar haymakers that you're going to want to be copying. Stuff like Portal to Phyrexia, for example. You copy the Portal to Phyrexia, your opponents immediately have to sacrifice 3 creatures, and then you smack them with a 5/5. Ugin's Nexus. It's a legendary artifact, so the copy you make immediately dies, goes into the graveyard. So you don't get to smash with it, but even better, you get to take an extra turn. And if you have a lot of energy stockpiled, or you just can keep casting more artifact spells, Saheeli plus Ugin's Nexus means you're going to just take infinite turns and win the game. So that's what Saheeli can do. I think you just take the coolest, most bombastic permanents in an artifact deck, and you copy them, and then your opponents cry because you're going to just destroy them with overwhelming value. So that's how I see Saheeli. It doesn't really feel like an energy deck to me. It feels like a Mishra deck that is Temur colored now, which is arguably just better. It's like a better Mishra, and Mishra is already very, very good. Now, the secondary commander is... well, it's a lot worse. Pia-Nalaar, Chief Mechanic. It's a 3-mana Temur, legendary creature, human artificer. It's a 2/4 that says whenever one or more artifact creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get 2 energy counters. And at the beginning of your end step, you may pay 1 or more energy. If you do, create an XX colorless vehicle artifact token named Nalaar Aetherjet with flying and crew 2, where X is the amount of energy spent this way. So Saheeli was this like super overpowered new Temur Mishra. I think it's like even more powerful Mishra. And Pia-Nalaar is kind of weak artifact vehicle energy commander. I'm not really sure what's going on here. The only thing that I can say of note is the Nalaar Aetherdrift is not legendary, so you can potentially make a bunch of them over time, which is kind of cool to use with your energy counters. And you can make up to 6 energy. If you have 3 opponents and you heat each of one of them, you can make up to 6 energy counters per combat. That's kind of good. I guess on a 3-drop, that's a lot of energy, potentially. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what you're going to be doing here. This is like Temur Vehicles, which is like a new design space. We haven't had a Temur Vehicle Commander before, and there are some cool cards in Temur colors that you wouldn't have access to, outside of like this commander, like Roaring Earth, for example. Typically vehicle commanders didn't have access to green. They were usually like white and blue base, sometimes white and red. So like Tezzeret Betrayer Flesh was something that other vehicle commanders had access to. It works really well with the Aetherjets that Pia-Nalaar is making, because you can like spend 1 energy rather, to make a 1/1 Aetherjet, and then Tezzeret can animate it and becomes a 4/4 until end of turn, which is okay, I guess. And then you have access to green, which is the more exciting thing. Like there is a little bit of vehicle support, like Roaring Earth, that other vehicle commanders didn't have access to before. So that's kind of cool, I guess. There's just not a lot to work with right now for Temur Energy, or sorry, not Temur Energy, Temur Energy vehicles. There's not a lot to work with. Aetherdrift, obviously the main set is going to give us a lot more stuff to work with. This precon is also going to come at least with like 10 new cards that will kind of bolster the strategy. So we'll see how it ends up. Right now, though, I would confidently say this is the weakest commander out of all the ones that we've seen so far. And it's going to need a lot of support from the main set and this particular precon for it to start looking kind of good. And that's it for today's previews. 4 commander cards, and I think by Friday we're going to be seeing all the rest of the cards in the precons. So be sure to like and subscribe to make sure you never miss a preview. I'm so excited to get through the full deck lists as they're revealed. So come back by the end of the week. We should have all the cards to talk about. I'll do full videos on both of them. So until then, friends, see ya.